I think it's going to do very, very well. I think that we are going to be in a position to pass something as early as next week, which will be monumental.
I think it'll get worked out one way or the other, but it's going to take good faith on both sides to be able to do it.
The tax reform bill is a disaster. It helps the wealthiest, most powerful corporations and individuals, and it hurts the middle class.
I think maybe the most important element people aren't yet thinking about is this April 15th, when you file your taxes, that is the last time you will file under this monstrous broken tax code.
Well, it's in. It's done. They've finished the negotiating, and it is locked in stone. Right now, the bill has been filed, the tax reform bill, in the House, expecting a vote early next week. And here are the details. We put them up before. 7 tax brackets, top rate individually at 37%, taking that down from 39.6%. Doubles the standard deduction for single filers and married couples, lowers the corporate tax, as we talked about, to 21%. That begins January 1st, 2018. You have a continual write-off for state and local taxes up to a certain amount, expands the child tax credit. And that
it turned out to be a threat that he intended to carry out, and won the argument. I mean, won the battle. I think that's going to be helpful for Republicans as they make the case that this is something for families in the middle class.
And that debate played out today. Senator Portman and the president on this.
And in terms of the child tax credit, I think you'll see some improvements there for folks who are at the lower end of the economic ladder. So I think it'll be a very popular bill, and among our Republican colleagues, I think we'll get the votes.
The Democrats have done nothing in terms of children, in terms of child tax credit. We're putting in a tremendous child tax credit, and it is increasing on a daily basis.
So it goes to $2,000, and now up to 70% for the lower income can essentially be paid out off of this.
And again, I don't look. There is some stuff in here that's good, and certainly stuff that's in here that is good for my husband and certain people in certain tax brackets. I don't think it addresses all of the concerns that the middle class, especially the blue collar working class, that put Trump over into that White House with their votes. What do they want? They want job. They want to see money in their fists. They're not getting a check that's cut for $2,000. That's a whole different story when you break it down over 12 months. And when you look at deductions, they are for the rich. I mean, what type of people are itemizing their deductions? Lower middle class Americans in this country aren't doing that. So I don't think it's going to help them in the midterm election. I don't think the child tax credit is enough. Not just that. In addition to that, the polls just show it's not as favorable to the American public. And at the end of the day, this is, hey, look, we finally did something for Republicans, but how much of it is politics, since they can't even really pay for this,
sure,
versus in the best interest of their constituents.
On the public polling, I mean, it's pretty complex to tell in an elevator story. If by the time you get to 2018 and it sinks in February or March and the economy is rising further than even it is now, that one would think would have benefits across the board.
Absolutely. And of course, the reason that it's so complex to explain in simple terms in the first place is because the stupid tax code is so freaking impossible to understand in the first place, and very wealthy people have to hire people to come and suss it all out and figure out how.
I love your passion on this.
It's unbelievable. But I do think you're exactly right. If at the end of the day this does help the economy and those people do get some of those jobs, and all you have is Democrats sitting on the sidelines and talking about class warfare, even though their economic improvement situation is improved, and talking about Russia, I think it has a tremendous impact.
To that point, a little montage of the president interacting with the press on the South Lawn this morning.
It's a shame what's happened with the FBI, but we're going to rebuild the FBI. It'll be bigger and better than ever. I think he should. There is absolutely no collusion. That has been proven. My worst enemies, they walk out, they say, there is no collusion, but we'll continue to look. How was the call with Vladimir Putin? It was great. He said very nice things about what I've done for this country in terms of the economy. I don't want to talk about pardons for Michael Flynn yet. We'll see what happens. Let's see.
So a lot of coverage today about not a pardon yet for Michael Flynn, no collusion, absolutely no collusion, which he said before, and following up on the FBI. And then he went to deliver a speech at the FBI, which he praised heartily.
The remarks he made to the agents and the people that work hard every day to carry out the mission of the FBI couldn't have been more complimentary and positive. And so he left all of his stinging rebukes for the upper echelons of the FBI on the White House lawn, which I thought was probably a smart way of handling that.
Leslie.
Well, they weren't in the audience, right? At the last minute tip, they said, there's not enough room. You know, you guys can stay. Not that they were going to come anyway. Look, I think the whole email thing is stupid. I think it was stupid for the two people to be corresponding like this.
You mean
the text messages, emails that they had to one another. The reality is that whether we work inside the Beltway or outside, we have opinions, and we have political opinions and political leanings. And there are a lot of people that I know, even Republicans, who don't favor this president or some of the things that he says. But, these individuals also, bash Democrats, Eric Holder, Chelsea Clinton, the list goes on. The problem that I have with what we saw, the montage and other things that the president has done, is do you believe him then or do you believe him now, right? I mean, because he's, rebuking the FBI, and then he stands there in front of law enforcement and talks about what a great law enforcement team that we have in this nation, as we do, and forgetting that FBI is part of that great, big law enforcement team. The same thing with Roy Moore. I backed the guy. He denies it. He said he didn't do it. I backed the guy. I'd rather have a Republican. You got to concede. I mean, he flip-flops.
Well, he had already made the call to Doug Jones to congratulate him on his win.
Right.
Steve.
Yeah, look, I think the issue with the text messages is whether these private views, which I think virtually everybody agrees that they're allowed to have, affected their judgments or their actions in carrying out their responsibilities as public servants. And I think there are texts that suggest they might have. It's worth looking into. I don't think the president should have answered the question about a pardon for Michael Flynn the way that he did. It's not appropriate for the president of the United States to say that he's considering a pardon for Michael Flynn, even as he's saying he's not considering a pardon for Michael Flynn by saying yet. He should have just passed on the question. He should do that next time he's asked, because he'll be asked again.
Next up, Friday lightning round. Violence in Chicago, Iran, Yemen, plus winners and losers.
And you look at what's going on in Chicago, what the hell is going on in Chicago? What the hell is happening there? For the second year in a row, a person was shot in Chicago every 3 hours. You don't think these people in this room can stop that? They'd stop that.
You recently declared Chicago schools a Trump-free zone.
The city of Chicago, yeah.
The whole thing?
The whole thing, man.
What is it?
Our motto, a city he'll never sleep in. We don't want him, man.
All right, Chicago, that's where we start the lightning round. The crime rate there, Chicago murders so far, 628 in 2017 compared to 731 2016. But that stat that the president used is accurate every 3 hours. Charlie.
Yeah, I don't know why anybody like Rahm Emanuel wants to pick a fight with this president, because he's going to hit back. He always does. And it's a good point. I mean, Chicago is a petri dish of policy, democratic policies, and gun laws in particular. And it's a disaster, as it is in many other cities.
Just up the road in Baltimore has a high murder rate.
Number one, we were talking off there, right? Almost double. I'm from Boston, and Massachusetts has extremely strong gun control policies. And Boston wasn't on that list of top 30 dangerous cities. So I don't like that argument of every time it's a blue state or a blue governor. I don't buy it. What I do buy, if we look at the Detroits, the Chicagos, the Baltimores, and they always love to mention Chicago, a city I love and lived in for 4 years, is they don't look at the multifaceted problem. It's not just about guns. There's drugs, there's poverty, there's unemployment within the African American community. And we cannot be, we have to admit that this is a problem with the African American community, because these are disadvantages that this community has in all of these cities, and Chicago is a big part of that.
This is not the end of this topic. Another topic, however, Iran and its activity in Yemen, and the U.S. comment about that.
These are the recovered pieces of a missile fired by Houthi militants from Yemen into Saudi Arabia. The missile's intended target was the civilian airport in Riyadh, through which tens of thousands of passengers travel each day. Just imagine if this missile had been launched at Dulles Airport or JFK. It's hard to find a conflict or a terrorist group in the Middle East that does not have Iran's fingerprints all over it.
It was a strong speech by Nikki Haley. The response by the Iranians, the Zarif, the foreign minister. When I was based at the UN, I saw this show and what it begat, pointing back to pre-Iraq war intelligence.
Yeah, well, it's a dodge. It was an important speech from Nikki Haley, and it's important that the Trump administration is doing this. For the better part of 8 years, the Obama administration ignored the fact that Iran was the leading state sponsor of terror in the world. James Clapper at one point even wrote out Iran's terror activities of the threat assessment that he provided Iran, and it was a big stink in Congress. We need to be calling out Iran at every stage. It's important to provide people the evidence of what Iran's up to with respect to terrorism globally, with respect to troublemaking regionally, and more broadly, what Iran is up to with its nuclear program.
All right, lightning winners and losers. Steve, you start.
My winner this week is Sassy, Roy Moore's horse, who is never again going to have to survive the public spotlight. And apparently some awful riding by Roy Moore. I don't know anything about this, but I'm told.
Loser?
Loser is Steve Bannon, who I think may have learned a lesson about not backing credibly accused child sexual predators.
Okay, lightning, winner and loser.
Winners, I would say, are African-American women in the state of Alabama, who showed when that, you come out as part of a population, and certainly a gender, we women, that we can prevent alleged child molesters from becoming senators. And losers, speaking of, Roy Moore, not a senator, not even a judge. Take the judge off your Twitter account, and he has to concede.
Winner and loser.
Loser of the week is the FBI. Jim Comey and Bob Mueller have done more to discredit the agency and the hard work that so many people do more in the past week than ever before. The winner is Deep State, because watching Rod Rosenstein's testimony and the frustration, you've got Republicans in charge of Congress and the White House, and the stonewalling and the inability to get the questions answered proves that the Deep State is here to stay.
But we should say there are good people at the FBI.
Well, I meant to say that. If I didn't.
Okay, I just wanted to help.
Thank you.
When we come back, notable quotables.